Greetings from Southern Yankee Homestead. This is your first time, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Well, guess what we're getting into today? Go ahead, guess. Yep, we're getting into the sawmill. Outside's not a very good day to work, so I figured, yeah, I got some time. Let's go ahead and work on this since I can't really go hunting right now because, well, one, I don't think the deer will be moving right now, and two, I'm a fair weather hunter. I moved the mill in because I wanted to get some more accurate measurements than out in the field. What we're going to be doing, if you notice off to the side here, there's some steel. S-T-E-A-L. Kidding. S-T-E-E-L. It's not stolen. I paid for it. Trust me. It hurt a lot. But it's not all for this project. Some of this is for another project that will be after this gets out of the garage. What I have here are two, well, for this project, two 20-foot 2x3 beams. And I have the mill lined up here. Pretty close so that you can see the difference in the length. Now, on camera it doesn't look like that big a difference, but trust me, it is. One of the flaws of the harbor freight mill is the length. When I am all the way back, against the stop, I can cut a 9-foot 6-inch log. Well, that's fine and dandy, but if they give us another foot, you could do a 10-6, which I wouldn't be extending the mill if I could cut a 10-foot. But with going to a 20-foot beam, I believe I'll be able to get a 16-foot 6-inch log on the mill, which realistically is going to be a lot heavier than I can possibly lift with the tractor in most cases, unless it's a fairly small log. But if it's green, we're pushing the limits of my little tractor. Anyhow, I set the mill up here so I could get some measurements. The saw head takes up 31 inches, basically from where it stops to the tip of the blade, which is about here, is 31 inches. We're 7 inches from here to where this stops. So my idea is to set it up so that we have that 38 inches on either end without bunks, and then recycle these bunks and some of the angle. With that, I'm going to have to do some modifications to the bunks, because the actual measurements from here to here is 2.5 inches. And I could give you the measurements for the mill itself, but that's kind of arbitrary at this point. But that is 2.5 inches. The beams on this are actually 2.5 by 4, or 2.25. 2.25 by 4. Well, I couldn't find any 2.25 by 4, and the best I could do is a 2 by 3, which will be fine for this application. Except it's going to lower the saw head down an extra 1/2 inch. Well, that becomes a problem right about there. I have barely a 1/2 inch right here. No problem here, but here there's going to be a problem. So what I got to do is trim this out. I'm basically going to make this a little bit sharper. The next issue that I noticed on this track is here. This log bunk comes all the way, or this log stop comes all the way over here. So I'm losing, we'll say 2 to 3 inches. We'll say 3 inches. So what I want to do is cut this off and move this whole thing over here 3 inches, so that my log stop will be just inside this area here. That's the plan. But before I do all that, I gotta cut the mill apart. Normally, these mills are bolted together. Well, the prior owner of this was nice enough to upgrade the engine and weld in all the bunks. So the mill is 30 3/4 wide. We're going to maintain that width, but we're going to make some other additional modifications. Okay, I lied. I'm going to pull a couple feet off this before I start cutting it. Yes, my sawmill has feet. If you haven't seen that video, under the Harbor Freight sawmill, there is a video showing me making the feet for this. You'll get to see it again later because I'm going to make some more feet. So, one of the problems I was having, this space here is too narrow to get in here to cut this weld for a 4.5 inch angle grinder. The other problem is my die grinder. I'm not sure if that will run it, or my right angle cutter. So while I was up at, and I really don't want to go through and cut this whole thing apart using a Dremel tool, but I will if I have to. So while I was up at Lowe's picking up some part, I found a Dremel Universal that's supposed to be carbide cutting for, says steel. I don't think I trust it, but we got it on the end of my Dremel Multi-Max. Let's see what happens. Guard your ears. That didn't take long. I guess I need to tighten the screw down more. Alright, can't find my ball peen, so we're just going to go with what I got. Need to go more. Can't tell if I'm breaking the weld or not. Alright, see what happens. The Dremel Multi-Max worked. The carbide tip worked. Alright, thankfully that didn't take me too long. The welds were not of the best quality. So what I did, you can see here, I undercut and then I came in with a cold chisel and basically broke the welds loose on the back side. A lot of these, yeah, like here, you can see it didn't have any penetration whatsoever. So as soon as I started to peel it up, pop, it came off. So now I get to go through and grind out all the old welds. Grind off all the old welds. I'm probably not going to worry about the rails too much, except for the stretches I'm going to reuse. Yeah, I'm going to reuse a couple of these. I hadn't mentioned it before. And also, while I'm thinking of it, even though I'm complaining about the previous welds, I understand they held together. They were ugly. But this is not a car. This is not a ship. This is not a professional using a professional welder to weld this. It's not up to my standards as far as welding goes, but my standards are still a lot lower than you professionals out there. So if you're watching this, be kind. It's going to hold together, I promise. It just may not be up to code or whatever your certification is that you prefer. But let me change out the cutting wheel for a flap wheel so that we can take care of the other end of some of these. Oh, one of these, this one right here has this extra bracket on it. I'm going to go ahead and cut that bracket off. But that was when this mill came in. You can see right here, there's a, well, right there, there's a split in the rail. So that was the beam for the center so that you'd bolt the two halves together. If you don't have one of these mills, that is one of the inherent problems with the mill, is this beam, for lack of better words, has gaps in it even at the best of alignment, and that messes up your track when you're rolling. One of the things I did, and it would have been an old video and a pretty bad video too, one of the first ones on the on our channel, I went ahead and welded this up and repainted it and cleaned it up a little bit so that there was no gap, or a minimal gap there. You can see here it started to, and yeah, that was me filling in the old stuff and then grinding it down. But actually, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut that because this will be a lot easier to move in 4 shorter pieces than 2 bigger pieces. So yeah. All right, well, we're all cleaned up. Well, we aren't, but all the welds are cleaned up. I've decided I'm not gonna cut the log stops off, basically these, because this one is gonna be damn near impossible. They got it welded on both inside edges, so cutting the weld out is going to be too difficult, so we're just going to roll with it. We still got to modify those a little, but I think I need to clean up the floor from all the grinding first. Okay, we got my vertical horizontal bandsaw out. This is a Central Machinery. Yeah, it's just a Central Machinery. She's had a rough life. I don't know how many blades I've had on it. I don't know how much metal I've actually cut with it. It's just, let's say, a lot. The gearbox leaks. It ran the fluid out years ago. Every once in a while I pop it open, pack some more grease in there and keep running it. I put more blades on it than I can count. I don't think it's exactly aligned correctly, but I don't care. We're gonna see if I can get a little bit more use out of this blade. I'm hoping that it survives. If it don't, then I guess we'll be done early until I can get out to Harbor Freight and buy another piece of crap cutting blade. But we're going to be converting over the mill, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to use the original rails to make our ends. So we're going to start with cutting them to the width we need and verifying that their cuts are accurate. But we're going to cut them to the width we need, in those cases the length, and then modify them a little so that we can key them in a little bit better. With that, we're not going to need the stops that we had before. So let me start with getting one of these hoisted up and level, and we'll see if we need to trim the end a little. And we're just going to let it go. On the money. We are 30, 30 3/4. Yep, okay. Then off to the races. That was slow. And realistically, this is a slow way of cutting. But it's what I have. Okay, I think we need to make an adjustment here. Yeah, we got to figure out how to do that adjustment. That is riding way too low. We'll be back. GoPro messed up, sorry. So I made the adjustments to the mill. Hopefully it'll run a little bit better. The band wheel is off-centered, it's worn, it's had a lot of use. And the gearbox is leaking pretty heavily too. So I'm just going to go ahead and let her run for now. Alright, I was about to go out and I realized that this isn't cutting right. So if you see, I don't know if you can see or not, the band is going banana shaped. So something isn't quite right there. I don't know if I didn't have my tension enough, or if there's something else going on there. But something, I know what it is. Alright. Basically, what's happening is the band is coming off the wheel. You can see it sticking out a little bit here. So I was working with the rollers on this lower one to get them to stay in there. Well, in the process, I turned this because it's on a shaft that has adjustability. And by adjusting that, you can see my cut here was kind of going down and away. I did an adjustment, so it was a little bit off still, and then I made another adjustment, and now I am vertical according to a square. So if I take this, line it right up, she's right on the line. Or at least close enough for this redneck to do what he's doing. I gotta find my other square. Wonder where that went. Oh, found it. It's on the miter saw. Big surprise there. Alright, so with that being said, this piece is scrap. I can't use it. So I gotta go ahead and cut another one of these. Good thing I got 3 more of them to work with, huh? So going off my steel that I have already, I've got 3 inches, almost 3 inches exactly. So what I want to do, this here, well, it wasn't that far off. Slide this back just a hair, almost exactly 3 inches. Might be a little over. We can fill it with weld though. Now this one I'm going to have to monitor a little closer because I don't want to cut the entire beam. You'll see what I mean when we get to the next step. Alright, so first cut like this, I stopped it short. So if you look, when I lift this, you can just barely see the metal or the green coming through the metal filings, which one of the reasons I do this, for whatever reason, those metal filings coming off are oddly hypnotizing. So at that point we're going to lift that up and we're going to flip it around. Alright, well that's the second one. Has to be loosened up first. There we go. So, I might find this work, but this should work. But I used, oh, what do you call that stuff? Soapstone, and marked my edge here. So I'm going to cut along the edge of the soapstone to basically take this chunk out, then do it on the other end, and finally the other one. And I'm also switching over to my Drill Master angle grinder because I burned through all the other batteries. Alright, we got gloves, we got eyes, and we got ears. That's enough. I can get the rest of it off of the grinder. So you know, I still got a little bit of a lip there, but I got a bulk of the material out. We'll readdress that in a few minutes. Try a little bit different piece of soapstone this time. Oops. Well, that being done, onto the grinding wheel. Well, I got everything all ground down smooth and cleaned up, roughly. I still need to go through and clean up the angle iron that we're going to be using. But if you also notice, I chamfered the edges a little. Gave it a little bevel. We'll get to the reason in that in just a minute. But let me find out how well my cuts were first and see how close we are to our final width. So, oops. Ooh, we're wide. We need to be 31 and a half or 30 and a half. Here's a 30 3/4. Glad I wrote this stuff down. 30 3/4. Okay. So we got to be 30 3/4, and we are. Let's go up to the end. Ooh, we are a 1/16 out on this end. I don't know if you can see that in here or not. Come on, stabilize with me here. GoPro is not playing nice. So we're a 1/16 out on this end. Yeah, we got to square this up a lot better. Let's square this up and then recheck it. This project is an evening and bad weather project, so there's no rush to do it. If we get good weather, I'm working outside. I don't know if I mentioned that before because it's been a couple weeks since I started this. Again, there's no rush. I'm doing this as an evening project when time allows. But we're back at it. The ends cut, both ends. You can only see that one because, well, you get dizzy if I do that too many times. I also use the angle grinder to go ahead and grind off a bunch of the coating. So if you see here, the shiny parts, I basically went down to bare metal. Reason behind that, if you're not a welder, that is actually, well, depending on who you talk with, there's an anti-corrosive coating on it, or it is the slag left over from actually forming it. I'm not entirely sure. I just know if you weld over it, your welds are going to be porous and ugly. So that's a little tip for you amateur welders. Clean surface. Clean surface makes a better weld. I can't guarantee I'm going to have a good weld though. It's been 6 years since I did any major welding, probably close to 7. So yeah, anyhow. I have this down, I have it all squared up, but I need to go ahead and make some modifications to the end rails. So when I took a measurement from outside to outside, I am 31 and what's, yeah, oh, about a 1/16 of an inch over on the width. So what I'm going to do is, if you notice, this end here sticks out a little further than this end. So I'm going to grind this out probably down to about the thickness of my bevel and then stick this back together. That should, in theory, bring me down to 30 3/4 inches, which is what we want for this. Once I have that done, then we'll turn our attention to the other end. You've seen grinding before. I'm going to save you the punishment. Okay, I lied. I'm not grinding it off. 30 3/4 on the dime. Alright, I don't know what's going on with the Hero 9, but she's been very flaky the last couple months. But anyhow, I went through, I used my big tape measure, checked the diagonals. I'm about a 1/16 off overall. It's 20-foot track plus the 1/4 inch, so 20 feet and 1/4 inches. I'm reading 20 feet 3 1/16 of an inch as far as a diagonal goes. Basically, that corner to that corner to that corner. So I'm square enough that I guarantee I'm a lot more square than the original tract was. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with tacking this in place. And for tacking it, we're going to be using our Hobart Handler 140. Yeah, she's a little dirty. She's in the garage. We do everything in the garage as far as woodworking, welding, making soap, harvesting animals, drying stuff, so fixing stuff, you know, auto mechanics and whatnot. So she gets dirty. We're gonna start. This thing has usually been pretty good. Well, we're good on wire. Usually been pretty good as far as the plate goes. So what's that? 1 asterisk. What's 1 asterisk? Multiple passes required. Okay. So this says 4 and 50. So basically we're going to go 4. It says 50. I know this thing, we're going to go a little bit under 50. I want to have a little bit hotter flame. And at this point, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to do good heavy tacks to hold the corners in. Once we get that set, we're going to move to the other end. And while I'm thinking of it and putting this back together, you saw me bevel the edges before. I just went ahead and cut out a little corner so it didn't have a square corner. Part of that is because my welder is not strong enough to get the proper penetration without that. If I would just go through and weld it with, you know, basically butt edge to butt edge with no bevel, it would do it, but it would be a bridging. It wouldn't be actually working in with the metal. I wouldn't get good penetration. So that's why you basically bevel it on thicker stuff. Even though it's not recommended, I have welded 1/2-inch plate steel before. Again, not recommended, but I have done it. Another side note, where my welding ground goes, I also ground that down. Now I know there's a lot of information I'm putting out in this video. I try to do that to the best of my ability so that if someone's watching this and it's their first time or they're thinking about doing something like picking up welding, it can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be scary. Figuring, oh, well, I'll just go out and buy me the $100 Harbor Freight 90 amp and I'll be, you know, welding in no time. Spend a little bit more money. I started with the Harbor Freight 90 amp. I didn't even get my first project done before I realized that thing was a piece of crap and went out and bought this Hobart Handler 140. It has been a very good welder for me. I've done several vehicles and countless projects with this. As far as protection, I always wear hearing protection when I'm welding, because one time I was welding, I got a stray spark inside my ear. That sucks. And wear gloves because metal shavings are the norm. Alright, here we go. Alright, with that done, we're going to go ahead and grab our 2 tape measures. Actually, we only need 1 right now. Leave this one up here. Yeah, we're a 1/16 off. So we're going to go ahead and shave this one down a little. I went ahead, well, my floor isn't exactly flat, so I've shimmed this up a little bit with some washers. Got it set somewhat close to where I want it, but the big part is from here to here is exactly 30 3/4 inches. There is a gap there, and there is a slight gap there and other gaps, but we're not worried about the gaps. We're going to be welding it, so let's get to doing some hot metal gluing. Well, at this point I'm standing outside because I don't know if you can see. There's a lot of smoke in the garage. Well, the smoke's not exactly something you want to inhale. It is burned up metal, and I could put a fan in there and blow it out, but it's kind of cool right now. Oh no. You might be able to see my breath. Yeah, I'm in a t-shirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the windows open and let it vent out naturally. I did pretty good on the lower welds. I'll clean those up later. The vertical welds, not so much. I am very rusty on that, and I probably should have cleaned that out a little bit more, but alas, I didn't. So it is what it is. We'll go ahead and we'll let this set. Oh, also, I have it sitting on wood. Yes, the wood would burn, but it's not that hot. But more importantly, I don't want the concrete floor to affect the metal. The floor is basically a giant heat sink at this point. The wood is just kind of like an insulator. I don't want it to pull the heat out of the metal faster than it can dissipate into the metal. I don't know if I need to do that, but it sounds good on camera. We've got that end welded up. We're going to go ahead and weld this one together. Once we get all the bunks in, we're going to go back through and flip it upside down so that we can weld it all again. But I still got modifications I got to make to the bunks. So let's start with finishing up what we already started. There. I had to elevate it. Whoops. Had to elevate it a little because for my next trick, I want to roll the mill through, but I need to also adjust for, or adjust my bunks for those stops that are hanging low. Now, Actually, let me go to the other end here real quick. Now, if you remember on the stock mill, they had these little screws and tabs that come up to stop the mill from going any further. Well, right here you see, using the original track, this lip sticks up a little higher than the rest of it, so when it gets to the end, it hits this I-beam and stops. So that cross member is working as the stop as well as help keep the distance. There's no guarantee the center is correct. I think it's actually a little too wide. I'm going to have to shrink it in a little bit because I can feel it rubbing as it goes down through there, and it's worse in the middle. That could also be the track rolling because I just have it up on a couple 2x2 rough cuts. So nothing is level right now. This is just proof of concept. And the concept is, it works. So next step, I'm gonna get some better measurements because guess what? I can tell where my blade is now in relation to the end. So now I can figure out where my bunks go. So off camera, I've been making some headway on the sawmill. In the evenings, I've been coming out here and taking off all these nuts. These nuts are down in here. I left this one in here. I'm just using the Dremel and one of these carbide cutting tips, basically cutting most of it away, then hitting it with a chisel and a big hammer. Also, went ahead and cut this beam down, took off the necessary angle, and then I put this clamp on to pull everything in so that it's the proper distance apart. So now, let's see here. Yeah, I'm hitting the clamp right there. So anyhow, you can see I'm going to have just enough clearance to make it through. I'll come back and refilm that. To cut these beams, it's been interesting because using an angle grinder, I'm absolutely horrendous at as far as cutting a straight line. So I've been using this, or I used this. And one of the problems is I can't run it down like I was the other metal, so I have to put the platform on here and cut it like you would, you know, wood. The problem is to cut it, basically having to go like this and hand guide it through. I think I have an idea to help out a little, but we'll see. Actually, it's more like this here. So we're not taking off much. Obviously wasn't level, but we're taking that much off the beam right there. So what's that, 2 inches ish? So let me go ahead and remove this last nut. I just left that there for visual purposes. I think you get the idea. And if you look at these, it's obvious they weren't on there very good. Some of these I was actually able to just knock off with a hammer. The rest of them I'm just basically getting something started and I'm able to pop them loose without having to you know, get too excessive with it. But in the same point, have to wear gloves with those with that multi-tool because it's getting hot when I do this. Now for the fun part, getting the alignment all right and then tacking it in place. So this is the general setup of what I'm going to do. If you notice, I got an area there for the stop.
This is one of the end ones. I'm not going to put one there, but then this one has one. This one has one, and then I'm going to leave this one off. The reason I'm doing it that way is because these first two should generally be 8 foot. If I want to do something less than 8 foot, I can slide it into the middle. And if I'm doing a full length, I'm only going to be using 2 anyway, so I'll use probably the first one and the third one. So this will give me the most amount of options as far as cutting lumber. So I'm not going to, I had originally thought I was going to stagger them, but realistically, if I got something under 8 foot, say I've got a really good chunk of maple that I want to turn in, curly maple, that I want to turn into lumber, but I only have a 4 foot stretch, I wouldn't be able to cut it on this. But by doubling up 2 of these, that will allow me to do a 4 foot stretch. And if I got something smaller and I want to do it, then I just have to come up with a better clamping method than what I have here. So that first one is pretty well set up where I'm going to have it. I'm not going to have it extend too far down. I want to be able to get the end of the log. And then I'm going to change course and go down to this end and figure out where to put the last one. That will give me, and then once I got that measurement, I can space this off because I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll just take the measurement from that one to that one and cut it in quarters. So I'll have 4 equal stretches here. Make sense to you? I got an idea. We got video. Let me go ahead and set this one, and then I'll go set the other one. With the first and the last log bunk in, I took a measurement, and from the sawmill side of that bunk to the inside where the clamp is on this one was 15 feet. So I did the math, and 15 feet, or I think that's 180 inches, figures out to 45 inches per bunk. So I've got these 3 bunks laid out at 45-inch intervals. So that should be equal the whole way down through. Because I was curious too, I went ahead and put this clamp right at the edge of this, and then took a measurement down to where the back of my saw blade stops. And I came out to 16 feet 9 inches. So that's a little bit of an improvement over the 9 foot 6. So this will allow me to cut 16 foot 6 inch beams. Just have to be careful of the saw head when I put the log on without having to do anything funky. I can always cut something longer, but yeah, we'll probably pass on cutting anything longer unless we absolutely have to. We like laminating wood instead. So I think this is where I'm going to leave this tonight.